Okay, let's have a little history lesson. Have you ever heard of Pangea? It is the idea that there was only one big landmass. They believed it looked like this. Then, as you know, the Most High separated the lands. This is when man rebelled against the Most High and tried to build a tower that would reach the heavens. Therefore, they would not succumb to any other flood of the Most High. Now, where do you think Israel would be in this map now that the lands have separated? Now, we know after the flood, the water made the land separate. All this ordained by the Most High. And he put Israel in the middle of three continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa, as a bridge between continents and empires. The land was constantly a battleground down the centuries. Whoever controlled Israel controls the land bridge between Europe, Africa, and Asia. Now, we all know that the skinny little land bridge that was home to Israel and Judah knows the tramp of many a foreign foot as nations move powerful than they crisscrossed it en route to great power struggles everywhere. So, can we say that this is true? Why? Because it matches history. Now, this is a world atlas map. And as you can clearly see, Israel is in the middle of three continents. So let's focus on this little area of Israel being in Africa because it has always been a part of Africa. Now, here's a brief history of how Israel was located in Africa 6 times. And we'll get back to the name of the Middle East later. First was the Egyptian Empire, and the capital of the Middle East was in Africa. The second time was the Ptolemaic Empire. The third time was the Fatimic Empire. The fourth time was the Ayyubic Empire. The fifth time was the Mamluk Empire. And the sixth time was the Khedivite Empire of Egypt, otherwise known as the Ottoman Empire. And remember, its capital was in Egypt, Africa, and Northern Africa. And as you can see here, the Middle East was always a part of Africa. Now, this is a whole map. Another map showing Israel part of Africa. As history tells us, the British troops captured Jerusalem from the Ottoman Empire and made them redraw the maps. We found out that the British captured Jerusalem from the Ottoman Empire and made them redraw the maps of the Middle East. Redraw them so they can be in Asia. This makes it a fact that both Israel and Lebanon are on the continent of Africa. Now, if you want to be technical about it, it's Northeast Africa. Now, if you want to get scientific about it, now, as you can see in this map here, the tectonic plate travels all the way to Turkey, but it is most definitely joined to Africa. This being said, if Africa was to shift, definitely the Middle East would go along with Africa and not Asia. So because the British made the Ottoman Empire change all of maps and things, we need to know who the British people are. Did you know America was part of the British Kingdom? We'll get back to that and the agenda later. Now, research says that most white people born in Great Britain, although British citizens, do not regard themselves as British and prefer to state their national identity as English, Scottish, or Welsh. Now, we know Rome played a great part in history, and we know the Romans fought the British. And the Roman military units and British rebelled and proclaimed one of their generals, who happens to be named Constantine, the new emperor. Are you starting to understand what's going on now? Now remember, all these people are foreigners to the original inhabitants of Israel. Remember, the original Judah had been shipped all over the world. Meanwhile, the foreign nations came in and stole scripture and formed a new religion called Christianity. You know what I'm talking about. The areas in which Paul preached, kind of was preaching against Christianity because Paul was a Nazarene. And this map showing the same area that once was Africa. So, what happened to the Ottoman Empire? The British took them over and made the Balfour Declaration, a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing its support for the establishment of the national home for Jewish people in Palestine. Remember, it used to be the Ottoman region. And by this time, the original inhabitants were shipped all over the world. Stay tuned for more. Let's finish our history lesson about Israel and Africa. Now, we left off talking about how this plate here is connected to Africa, which includes Israel. We found out that Israel was a part of all of these empires. Yeah, this one too. Located in northern Africa. Yeah, this one too, and they kind of look Arabian. But here it says that there were non-Arabians. But let's just say they were Gentile nations. Here's another nation that was connected to Africa. Yeah, and it was Turkey, all the way up to Turkey. We talked about the Balfour Declaration. And when the British took over the Ottoman region, they redrew the maps of the Middle East. We found out that Constantine played a part in this history, but we'll get to that later. Now we know that this decoration changed everything. It allowed the Zionists to come into this Middle East, but it wasn't called Middle East back then. Zionist is a religion and political effort that brought forth thousands of Jewish, from around the world back to their ancient homeland in the Middle East and reestablished Israel as a central location for Jewish identity. But they forgot about the people of Judah tribe. Now we know after the war, World I, European imperial powers reshaped the Middle East. This transformation, they said, started 100 years ago. From Britain again, and France signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Basically, this was an agreement to take over the Ottoman Empire. Remember, this little area here that the Most High gave the Israelites was surrounded by the foreign nations, the Gentile nations. Whoever controls this little area here, which was called Israel, will control the pathway to all of the continents. So we know that they wanted to control it for financial gain. And this happened all the way then in biblical times, and it's happening today. Now, the British called this Near East and Middle East. But all this changed after the Ottoman Empire collapsed a century ago. And the Near East came under the British control. Now, Winston Churchill, as Secretary of State for the colonies, created the Middle East Department. But some suggest that the Middle East term is problematic, and I would say it is. Now, some say that the area should be called West Asia, but the Arabian people say that it should be called North Africa.